Okay, I think my slides are going to go slightly faster than I planned because most of the presenters today has covered elements of what I was going to cover in this session. But I wanted to reframe the principle of how you as students can look at the environment of the market that you are going to. So this does tie on the previous presentation I did. Normally what we look at companies will send out we need new people to come work, and these are the types of skills we need. And the one example I'm going to use, because that's most of my background, is you need to be Revit proficient. Right, what does that mean? Okay, so there's a clicky, there we go. Okay, so you kind of learned in the earlier session, you just learn how to read a firm. You might not get to choose it, so you don't have really options with which company is the first one you're going to go to. But the method you bring into that firm, that's yours. How you apply it to problem solving, how you think about technologies, how you kind of use those conversations we had today inside a company. So the way I want to look at it is, don't start from the tools, start from the problems. Right. The floor, the problem-led, and problems in public is the kind of four areas we're going to talk about. So, okay, the floor. Firms aren't short on BIM talent, they're short on people who can run the software well enough, fast. Right, this is a little bit of a technical side. So if you know the companies you would like to ideally work with, uses Revit, you need to kind of look at Revit as the main tool, right? But not just how I can use Revit, so I can use it proficiently, I can use it deeply. And we'll talk about how we validate that later on. But yeah, so the companies generally run an onboarding costs money, so that's a problem for a company. You can imagine the first job you walk into, that principal owner, that company owner looks at you and says, there's about 6 months that I'm going to pay that person to sit in a seat, and he's not really going to produce anything of value. For a company, that's huge risk. So if you can validate that you don't need to spend 6 months on me, you only need to spend 3 months on me, or 2 months or 1 month, that's a conversation difference, right? And then this is normally the biggest problem. Juniors tend to break live projects. Any business owner would nod their head as being this is a real problem. I've trained companies in the past around their students, interns they bring on, just to reduce the risk of putting them on a project. So they go into about a week worth of training, just on general principles of how to use different software in the way they're going to apply it, just to reduce the possibility of students or interns breaking a project. Now, not every company has that flexibility or that capacity to do so. So know your tools well enough that nobody has to train you from zero. And then we want to look at problem-led, not tool-led. So yes, know the tools, know your market and the tools that you use. That'll give us direction, but then focus on the problems. What problems can you solve? So normally when we talk about a tool there, it's low value. Someone's saying, I know Revit, I know ArchiCAD, I know Rhino, whatever software you ask. Normally that doesn't give me a lot of confidence. They just generally say they play with the technologies, and I'm one of them. I'm not bashing on anyone. I've almost played with every other tech out there. But the focus is, we just don't want to have a list of technologies that you've played with. You want to have a set of technologies that you know well enough that can solve the problems you aim to solve. That adds more value in the conversation. So problem is scarce, it's high value. Start with a real problem and reach for whatever solves it. 1 tool, 3 tools, a spreadsheet, a phone call, whatever the case might be. Now, this might contradict what some people might have said. If Excel solves that problem the fastest, use Excel. Don't think we need to do everything in Revit or whatever software, Domex or WinGS or whatever else there is. If the problem can be solved the fastest by another tool that's maybe a little bit adjacent to the industry, and you can validate that, then that's a notch in that kind of problem-solving process. So you already know what this kind of looks like. Anyone can use AI for obvious cases. Who stopped using Google search and started using AI searches more, right? And if you use fancy plugins, new browsers, that makes it even easier. But a person that can look at AI and find real use cases to solve a business problem, that changes the narrative of what AI means. So if we bring it back to BIM, BIM has been around for quite some time. There's a lot of firms that struggle to understand how information and models come tied together. And if you can bring that perspective of how ISO for that type of firm can improve their delivery output, aka bring value to their clients, that changes the conversation. It looks at the problem and we find the things that solve that. So the way you can look at it is a T-shaped person. I don't know who's heard of a T-shaped person or kind of T-shaped profiles. So the T at the top is broad understanding, broad knowledge, broad perspective. And then the depth goes into the problem you're trying to solve generally every day or for your specific environment. So to give an idea, my T-shaped profile typically is broad in terms of technology. So my understanding of reality capture, BIM, II, all those kind of things is broad. My depth is more focused on the architectural industry. So I can look at a wide set of technologies and tell them how to implement them. I cannot go into every technology's depth. So that's where specializers in technologies comes another factor. So you will evolve, your T-shaped profile will evolve over time, and it's not cast in stone. So you guys might start off with broad, I've got a good understanding of what the industry looks like, you know, as an architect, QS, whatever, like that kind of idea. But I'm trying to solve BIM for small architects, residential architects. So I'm going to look at the technologies, the processes around those BIM items. So if you think about the first session that Ronald and I presented, we spoke about the 3 commitments. That's where that kind of depth start helping in that process. Find problems, solve it, and then look for the broader information that you need to go research to help solve it. So familiarity dressed up as proficiency. So this kind of comes back to I know Revit. And what it often means is I've watched a few YouTube channels, videos, I've done maybe here and there a training session. I rate myself 8 out of 10. Anyone that's rating themselves 8 out of 10, you're better than I am in Revit. So that's just kind of what the problem I believe is, that we kind of measure ourselves against the proficiency of a technology without understanding all the problems that technology can solve. What this typically translates to is a one-tool monotheism. The habit, trying to solve every problem with Revit, the one tool you know best. So we see a problem and we just reach for Revit and say, Revit is our problem, we're trying to solve this one. The reality is it's not. Like I said, if Excel is doing a better job at it, use Excel. If AutoCAD is better at solving that problem, use AutoCAD. We personally, and this might be the biggest contradiction, is we're reaching for this idea we need 3D models for everything. My take on it is every platform, every tool has a place and a problem it can solve the best. Knowing how that tool helps you solve a problem, that should be the tool choice. Now, if you only know Revit, then yes, you will reach for it first. But if you start looking at the broader perspective, what other tools could solve that problem, you're starting understanding your top T, your top shape, right? And you're starting to create a deeper depth or better understanding of the problem you're trying to solve. So, hunt problems, then specialize. Okay, I think that if I could do kind of varsity kind of over again and have to go job hunt, I would really start looking for problems that the industry is normally facing and kind of try and solve them in ways that at least looks meaningful to a prospective client that would want to hire me. Because the conversation is not so much about what I've done at varsity, but the types of problems I've tried to solve. And this is how I solve it. Okay, so the good thing about students, you guys don't think it, but you guys have a lot of time on your hands. And more so, you have a lot more energy than the other people. Looks like there's a fun little internet joke there. This is the time to explore. I'm not saying specialize today, I'm saying also explore problems that could lead to specialization in the future. I hope it makes sense. Okay. From skills you have to problems you solve. This is the kind of the theme I want to leave with you guys in a way. Right. So don't show on your CV, I have these skills. Rather say, I've solved these problems. Right. If you want to see something tangible, an artifact, that's how you can present it. So then the question is, how do you do it? Now, for the younger generations, develop in public is the best way I've seen on the market so far. We've been kind of trained that you need to have a CV, you need to have a portfolio, you need to have this big document explaining all the skills, all the projects, whatever you've done in the past. That is a stagnating document. What will motivate clients more, potential hires, is how you've tried to solve a problem. It doesn't have to be perfect. It shows curiosity, it shows mentality, it shows endurance, it shows capability, even if you fail. So develop in public basically means take what you're doing, whatever you're learning, create an Instagram reel, create a little article, create a little YouTube channel. It doesn't have to have the highest likes, the most viewed content, whatever the case might be, but it's something you can point to someone and say, listen, if you want to know more about how I think, how I'm trying to solve problems, here's some content I've developed. It can be informal, it doesn't have to be, Mr. Beast quality. It can just really be something you pull up a quick screen recorder with your phone and say, this is what you've done to solve this problem. The point being is, the scary part is do it in public, so make it available for everyone to see. That will lead to better growth for yourself as development, but also gives you better possibility in the future for new business opportunities, higher opportunities, those kind of things. And also show, if you look at your YouTube channel 10 years ago, kind of logic, you'll actually see your own progress over the years and where you might have made mistakes in the past, and then later on video that shows you how you actually solved the previous problem you struggled with. That creates different types of engagement, but I'm not saying likes and ratings, engagement with people that are in similar mindset or trying to find solutions for their problems. So kind of the 4 things to carry. The floor, know your tools well enough so that people don't have to train you from zero. Problem mates, start with problems, not the tools. Build your T-shape. No, it's not fixed. No, it's not cast in stone. It will evolve, it will change as you refine, as you grow. And for problems, use the freedom you have now to go find problems that you think are valuable to solve, either for yourself or potential clients or companies you want to work for. And you can go ask them. There's a lot of companies that tell you you're struggling with this and that and that. And then last one is do it in public. Show your thinking, be known and trusted. And it goes back to that basic assumption. It will become visible in how you do that content. So you can't pick the firm, you can build the method, start from problems. That's it, ladies and gentlemen.